After our adventures a couple of days ago, out with friends, I was on this 1955 Redditch bullet based 500 Greenlaner that I've been using recently. Came back covered in mud and filth. I actually managed to have a little off at one point, but no harm done to me or the bike really, thankfully. But I brought it home afterwards, realising a couple of things needed doing, especially after I pressure washed it and got all the filth off. But one of the things I'd wanted to do, and indeed did, was reposition a decompressor lever down here underneath the handlebar, as can be seen on quite a few machines of this sort of era. Originally I'd had it sort of sticking up between the advanced retard lever and the clutch lever, but it's actually easier to get a hold of because I've started using the decompressor on downhill slopes. Because this machine is so high geared, I can actually run it more slowly in first gear coming down a hill on the brakes with the decompressor lifted, and it's paid dividends actually. I'm still stuck with the bike being a little bit too high geared for uphill stretches, but at least I seem to have made a big improvement, a big step forward for me downhill work on this machine, so that's a big improvement there. But another thing that I'd noticed was when I was using a decompressor, it wasn't actually dumping very much compression, and it only really had effect as the engine was coming down to pretty much a stalling speed anyway. So I decided that perhaps there was a partial blockage or a build-up of carbon or something in the passageway that runs through the cylinder head and comes out behind the exhaust valve seat. So I decided that what I would do is I'd ride the bike up and down a lane here and hold the decompressor lever in, i.e. opening the valve, while I had the engine running under load, and I actually even gave it the throttle against the brake while the lever was pulled in, and sure enough it started to dump a lot more compression. I could hear a change in the exhaust note as something obviously cleared. But unfortunately what happened soon after that was the lever lost its springiness and just came back to the bars and started flopping around. And the reason for that was, and it resulted in me having to do some soldering work. You actually probably see a few little spatters of solder there, and that's not from my soldering obviously. But what happened was, with the decompressor valve open and the engine working under load still, the whole assembly here got so hot it actually melted the solder that holds the nipple on the end of the cable at this end, and the cable broke free from the nipple. So I had to take the whole lot out, clean everything up and resolder the nipple. So I won't be doing that again. So there's a bit of advice. Opening the decompressor valve when the engine's pulling is not a good idea, because the heat build-up could melt your solder. Probably okay to open it if you're throttled off, mind. Say if you get up to some speed on the road and want to give it a clear out, just throttle off and open the lever, and perhaps that'll give it a good blast to clear it. But I won't be opening it under load anytime soon or ever again. So anyway, I've got the decompressor valve working better. Obviously something's cleared, so that's good. I've got the lever repositioned to where I can keep a tighter hold of the handlebars while I'm coming downhill sections on the rough, so that's safer and more convenient for me. And also I noticed that I got quite a sort of petrol-y mess sloshed around on top of the tank here, so I cut out and fitted a new cork gasket to the filler cap there. So that's brand new, that gasket in there. And also this, the rim of the filler on the tank had paint on it in places, obviously from when I had it resprayed some years ago, but the paint wasn't everywhere. So what I did is I got a Stanley knife blade and scraped all the paint off where it was, all the way around, so we've got bare metal all the way around, a nice clean even surface for the new cork gasket on the filler cap to bear against and hopefully seal. So I've done that. I just topped the gearbox up gearbox oil up for the first time ever, I think since I built this machine about 12 years ago with my father. It says there, tells you what oils you were supposed to use in a day. I don't think I put more than 50cc of oil in before it was up to the mark. And this particular filler, this one's got an integral dipstick with it. There's no level plug on this gearbox, which I think was a backward step when they went back to a level plug myself, but whatever. Anyway, plenty of oil in there now. The bike's had a good clean up. Like I say, the decompressor's been moved to a more convenient location. Also, it may have become apparent to some people, towards the end of our last off-roading adventure, there was a bit of a whining noise coming from the rear end of this bike. Actually, you can see it there. It's where the knobbly tyre was rubbing on the inside of the mudguard there when we hit certain bumps and things, but it became more audible and happened more often towards the end. And the reason for that was this lot had worked loose a bit, and there were a couple of nuts and bolts inside there holding the mudguard to this little cross member that I've got there, and they had actually worked loose, and that was my fault. I'd used ordinary nuts, so what I've done is I fitted nylock nuts in there now, so they're not going to shake loose again. And I also substituted the washers for some with a larger outside diameter for a little bit more of a firm hold, and also hopefully make them less likely to break through the aluminium of the mudguard. So slight improvements, not all round, but in places, and I've greased up the swing arm pivot as well. So hopefully we're all set and ready for our next adventure. One other small thing I did recently was I changed the fuel tap as well, because I had a nice old vintage hexagon on-off sliding fuel tap, which actually leaked when the fuel was turned off. Not much, but it made a petrol-y mess and petrol-y smell, so got a lever type one. That's an old one as well. It's not one of the plastic ones, that's a proper brass one. So quality stuff of the period. And other than that, I've oiled and greased the chain. The seat mountings had become a little bit loose and the seat was rattling about a bit, so I've attended to that. But other than that, I think everything else has held out okay, and all that was a result of what must be quite a few hundred miles of very rough treatment. So all in, not bad at all, and quite respectable, I think, for what some people would regard as an old bone shaker. And it's all ready for the next outing, and the sun is shining, so that might be soon.